Today on CarTraction I've bought another vintage bike, and it actually represents my most expensive purchase with regards to my vintage bike collection. It's a proper, relatively high spec actually, very fast bike, a classic 1970s racing bike, but things have snowballed a bit since June of last year when I bought my first vintage bike, the 1952 CWS. As I said, this one is my sixth bike purchase, which does sound a little bit crazy, but I think with my current collection, what those bikes do, what those bikes are, it does fill a gap. So I think before I reveal today's classic bike purchase, let's have a little look at what vintage bikes are already here and how I think this one, I might be able to justify that it fills a gap in the collection. Now, to be honest, in real time there's been about 20 minutes or so between this clip and finishing recording the last clip, because I've just been standing on the driveway because there seems to be some kind of Austin Healey club run, and I'm not kidding you, there's been about 50 plus Austin Healey 3000s and other models going past today. It's incredible seeing them. But this video is of course about my vintage bike collection, and as I said, I'm going to go through all my bikes, and it makes sense to start at the start, chronological order. This is my 1927 CWS Path Racer. I've had this one probably about 8 or 9 months now, I've done loads of mileage on it. I absolutely love it. It started out life as a typical sort of roadster, just sort of commuter bike, and most of it rusted away. Previous owner Simon, who I bought it off for £150 I think it was, decided to turn it into a bit of a path racer. He found these absolutely stunning handlebars and put those on, and new tyres, new wheels. It's got an internal rear hub brake, so no brakes on the handlebars, it just brakes inside the gears in the rear wheel. I think it looks absolutely stunning, proper veteran era bicycle, or at least it looks a little bit older, like a veteran bike, even though 1927 is probably a little bit new for this style of bike. Sturmey Archer 3-speed, and I just absolutely love it. There's plenty of other videos on the channel if you want to learn more about it, but it just looks so cool, doesn't it? Welcome to my second oldest bike. Now, for a long time this was a mystery vintage bike to the channel. I just didn't know what it was. I bought it at the Manchester Velodrome Cycle Jumble for £70, which has actually turned out to be a really cheap and good buy. But I didn't know what it was at the time. I figured it was sort of 40s, but since then, there's a fly on it, I've done a lot of research, and it turns out to be a 1936 FH Grub, the predecessor to Freddy Grub, which means it's a really fantastic quality hand-built British frame from the 1930s. It was originally fixed, so no freewheel. I've converted it to freewheel because for a long time, probably until now, this was my fastest bike that I had, and I do a lot of sort of casual racing on this. Well, yeah, very casual racing and just fast riding on this one. So fast riding on a fixed is not really a good idea when you live around here with lots of hills, but since then, and especially the one I'm introducing today, that kind of puts that will be faster than this one. So this will no longer be the faster bike, but it's still a very, very quick bike with the right rider, and I absolutely love it. I think £70 is a really good buy. It's got some lovely parts. I've been told that the brakes are just worth 70 quid on their own, so you know, I've been told that this is probably worth a few £100 just as a whole bike as it is. It's not got a great paint job, but it's perfectly usable. I've got caught out on the rain on it a couple of times, really heavy torrential rain 2 times on this bike actually, and it seems to hold up alright. So this is the one so far I've done the majority of my mileage on. It's just a really usable thing. It's single speed. I think it's like a 75-inch gear or something. I miscalculated it at first. So it's actually a really high gear. You know, you can get 30 mph out of this gear, probably not spinning too fast. It is a bit crazy because it's only got one gear, but yeah, the 1936 FH Grub, so far the bike that I've done the most of my mileage on. Super usable, worth a lot more than I think I bought it for, but I won't be selling. Just switched to the small camera as my next vintage bike is inside the shed, and this is the one that started it all, my 1952 CWS Men's Roadster. Don't do that much mileage on this one anymore, to be honest. I had it out a few weeks ago, but to be honest, I just like the look of it, and it's probably sort of not really worth me keeping it, but I just really like it. It's my only roadster bike, so if I ever want to go for a really chill ride, you know, sat bolt upright on this, it's perfect for that, and it's also just a really nice looking thing. It's absolutely beautiful original condition. I paid £100 for this, and this was the first vintage bike that I bought before I started getting into the more racing stuff. Then I bought the 27 Racer, then I bought the Grub, so I started to move into the more racing stuff, which I think is what I prefer. But I couldn't ever really sell this, my first vintage bike, just because it was the one that started it all. It just stays in here now. I use it probably, I don't know, once a month or so. I don't do that much mileage on it. For a long time I did a lot of mileage on it. Last summer I was out on this pretty much every day. I did so much riding on this. It rides really well, but nowadays I just ride the more racing stuff. But I think it looks fantastic, and I definitely won't be getting rid of it. Now, the next bike I bought is from 2005, and I bought it because of this bike. So there was recently a triathlon in Nantwich, and I do a lot of, every Friday I do a time trial ride, and I'm like, wow, you know, I'm faster than a lot of these Lycra carbon fibre bike guys on this thing. It weighs like 20 kilograms and it's got a 3-speed, so I thought, right, I'll spend a little bit of money, get something a little bit more modern, 100 quid or so, and just see how fast I can go, really. So I decided to buy an entry-level road bike, and just because I thought, you know, hold on, I'm going quite quick on this. How quick could I go if I got something relatively comparable? So this one hasn't featured on the channel before. It's a 2005 Giant OCR3, a very entry-level road bike, but for me it feels incredibly fast because it's just so light. It's about 10 kilograms. It's like half the weight of all my vintage bikes. I've probably hit like 40 miles per hour on this bike, plus it's a very quick aluminium frame carbon fibre fork, 70 quid, very cheap. And it's just the sort of thing that it's a good winter bike. It's the good one to take out in the rain if I want to go for a ride, but don't want to take an old one out, although I got caught out on that one at time of recording 2 days ago. Yeah, it's just a cheap modern bike that's fun to really sort of fly around on. And here it is, the FH Grub, and my newest bike. Although I've had this one the longest out of the lot, actually. This is my Carrera Subway, sort of hybrid-y, rigid mountain bike. It's got no suspension, and I've done some pretty crazy off-roading on this one. I've had so many crashes on it, it's almost funny, but that's because this is the sort of off-road ragger bike. I appreciate it's like 2014, it's not old at all. I thought you guys would just like to see the whole sort of vary in the collections. The 2005 road bike, it's like 2014. You know, it works, but it's just a really fun thing to rag, my old Carrera. But now I think it's about time we had a look at my 1970s race bike, which hopefully fills in a sort of gap between the 2005 Giant and the 1936 Freddie Grub. Kind of fills in the gap between those. That's my excuse. Right, let's get the new purchase out. So everyone, here it is, the grand reveal. Welcome to 160 great British pounds that has been spent on this absolutely stunning, totally original 1978 Claud Butler Competitor. And this is a proper bit of kit, proper 1970s, really quite a high-spec classic racing bike. Now, this all started because I saw a very, very cheap bike for sale. I saw it was a Richmond, it was a 70s road bike, but it was very, very rare because it had chrome forks here. It was all together and it was £30. That bike was worth 200 easily. So I immediately sort of hit them up and said, oh yeah, I'll come and have a look round tomorrow. And they said, oh, we've got a guy coming round at 9:30 in the morning, but he seems to not say anything. So I was like, oh, okay, so someone's interested, because it was red, it basically looked like this, but it had chrome forks, which show it's a really high quality, expensive frame. You know, that was not a cheap bike new, and as I said, it's worth £200 just for the frame, and they wanted 30 for it. It was a genuine sale, it wasn't a scam. But when I was getting their address, because I was like, right, you know, got to snap this up on this morning, the guy turned up at 9:30 and nabbed it just before I got there, which was pretty annoying because that was silly cheap. It was, yeah, as I said, chrome fork, all together bike for 30 quid. Absolute steal. Well done to whoever bought that Richmond. So I was just sort of a bit annoyed, as you could probably appreciate, and I've just started sort of doom scrolling through Facebook Marketplace again, searching up vintage racing bike, looking for anything that I fancy when I didn't really have space for it, but I've actually made space now. And this cropped up, and it's a one-owner bike. The guy who I bought it off, a very nice chap, bought this new from a Claud Butler shop in 1978. It's a competitor. It has Reynolds 531 frame tubing. It has Weinmann type 600 caliper brakes, the ones that sort of pinch in like that. And it has a full Campagnolo Nuova Grand Sport sort of gearing system. If you don't know things about bikes, Campagnolo's very high-end, expensive sort of gears. And they're operated via these down tube shifters, which aren't indexed. They don't click with the gear. You just sort of wiggle them around and hope it goes into the right one. And it also has these absolutely gorgeous Cinelli Mod Campione del Mondo handlebars. It's really got some very high quality parts on this here. This wasn't a top spec racing bike. It's not like a sort of period Tour de France bike, let's say. The Tour de France is actually on at the moment, but it's just below. It really is a very high spec club racer bike, and I think it's a very fair price. 160. It's totally original, running, I think it's about 1 inch wide tubular tyres, which are quite fancy as well, so it's not like your typical clincher tyre, which they're called, and the tubes are sewn in to the same sort of bit. You know, the tube isn't separate from the tyre, it's glued onto the rim, which is very, very racy. And it's got sunshine hubs. It sounds absolutely lovely, the hub at the back, and to be honest, for 160, this is an incredibly high spec bike. I think it was a very fair price, and the guy was very happy that it was going to someone young, because, you know, I'm not just going to flip this on, because it's probably worth about, I don't know, 160 to 200 or so. I think it was a fair price I paid for it, considering its totally original condition and its interesting history. As I said, one owner since 1978. I'm only the second owner. I'm probably going to have it as long as him, but I'm not I'm not going to flip this on, you know. I'm going to keep this one for a long time. I've done a couple of rides on it. The main one was last Friday, as I mentioned, the Friday time trial bike ride that I do. It's a sort of semi-competitive, sort of fun event with the Nantwich Triathlon Club. I'm not a member of it, you can just turn up, and a friend of mine who I actually bought the 1952 CWS off told me about it. He goes on his sort of 1800s racing bikes, and some, like last week he was on a 1947, I think, Paris, very nice racing bike, and he told me about it. And, you know, so nowadays we go along on our very old bikes and quite often beat these modern guys. So last Friday I did the grand reveal to the Nantwich Triathlon Club of the 1978 Claud Butler, and to be honest, they didn't see a lot of me on the run. I finished first by a long way. I make it sound like it's a competitive race. It's not. They're a great bunch of casual people in Nantwich. It's called the Farmer's Pants. It's a 11.4 mile time trial ride, and I did it in 36 minutes on this bike, which I think is like an average speed of 19, almost 20 mile per hour, which is proper quick considering it's hilly. And yeah, this bike is mega quick. It's so light. It's, I don't know, probably about 11 kilograms, which I'm sure any carbon fibre bike rider would turn their nose up at, but for me, this is very light. It's not as fast as my Giant OCR 3, because this has 2 chain rings on the front and 5 chain rings on the back on the cassette, so it's effectively a 10 speed bike. It's got 10 gears, 2 at the front, 5 at the back. 2x5 is 10. So the gears go really high actually, but obviously they're very slow to shift, down tube shifters, and I'm not used to them yet, but you can keep your speed up on this thing. It is really, really fast bike. It really is, and I'm very pleased to have what is possibly the best bike in my collection in the eyes of a collector. You know, this has some really high spec parts, and it's a very valuable bike, and it's safe to say, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So let's have a closer look at some of the things that I absolutely love about this superb, absolutely, totally original 1978 Claud Butler Competitor. Close up on a couple of the finer aspects of the bike. Here are those gorgeous down tube shifters. Quite difficult to use, especially for a modern rider, but to be honest, I'm used to Sturmey Archer 3-speed hubs, so I'm sort of quite difficult to use. And as I said, it's Campagnolo Nuova Grand Sport, which is the second highest sort of gears you could get in this period. There was the Campagnolo Super Record, which is like full professional Tour de France race bike territory, but this is not far behind at all. That's what I said. This this, you know, can look like a sort of 50 quid, sort of, I don't know, Coventry Eagle or Ellswick Hopper lightweight bike, which are great buys. I think they're really cheap still, but with these components, this is just a little bit ahead. If you don't know how downtube shifters work, these are your gear levers, and they're not like click, click, click to each gear. So you change gears by moving that guy there. I'll actually just move it now with the gear lever. As you can see, that moves and pushes the chain onto different chains on the cassette, different train rings, sorry, on the cassette. And these are quite interesting to use because you have to balance them, as I said, because there's no clicking. You're just sort of guessing where the gears are. As you can see, the front one moving there, you just have to sort of trim them very carefully, but it's quite entertaining, to be honest. You can see the original decals on the frame. It's in really good condition, this bike, to be honest. I'm not sure what mileage it's done, but that doesn't really matter because it's just sort of what you're looking at in the flesh. And here are those absolutely gorgeous handlebars. You know, this makes it a really high-spec bike. Reynolds 531 steel frame. I'm sure some people will have had bikes similar to this when they were relatively new or in the 80s, and will know Reynolds 531 was probably one of the best frame qualities out there. A really nice frame to ride, to be honest. It's a more lightweight version, effectively, of my Freddy Grubb frame, because that's sort of 40 years older. Has sunshine hubs. I've had the eyes of quite a, you could say, bike expert on it, and he reckons it's quite a quality thing. So it does sound like quite a good bike, because I don't know too much about these, but at least it sounds like I haven't done too badly out of it. It's the Weinmann 600 or 500, I can't read, 500 or 600 side pull caliper brakes. It does barely anything on the back, to be honest, but the front one works quite well. I'm not sure why, you know, old rim brakes don't seem to work that well. All the gears work beautifully. One thing I'm going to do is, very kindly, the owner has serviced it completely before putting it for sale. It's had new bearings in the two wheels, in the bottom bracket down there, and I think it might have had new bearings in here as well. Look at those lovely handlebars. But yeah, one thing I'm going to do is, how he's routed these cables isn't really my sort of thing. He's used these modern sort of rubbery plastic clamps to hold them on. I understand that because it means it doesn't sort of catch the frame and scratch anything, but I'm going to have to find a more period correct way of doing that, because that just isn't very aesthetically pleasing, and I'm all about original parts. The suede saddle I don't think is exactly original, but it's sort of negligible really. It's right for this sort of bike, even though if it's not the one that was sold new. And bikes are for riding, so I think later today, but very soon in the video, I'll take this one out for a spin. It's a very, very fast bike. As I said, on the Nantwich Triathlon Club, I was flying on this, averaging just under 20 mph over 11.5 miles. It's so fast, this bike, and it feels great to ride. And yeah, I just think it's an absolutely gorgeous thing. Maybe to a lot of people it just looks like your average sort of 60s, 70s road bike, and I can absolutely understand that. But when you look closer at this one, you see that it has some very expensive components. You know, I think the gears are probably worth like 100 quid on their own, to be honest, and the handlebars probably that again. So if I were in the business of taking apart bikes and selling the parts, I think this would be a good investment. But this will be staying like this, and I'll be doing a lot of mileage on it. In other news, recent oil change on the Buick. So you put like a heavier grade oil in, yeah? Because it was putting out blue smoke, and that's because it was leaking through the valves because it's too light.
I think it was a little bit light, so on the overrun sometimes you get a wisp of blue smoke out the back.
We've been to a few events in this, to be fair.
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
Oh, yeah.
It does have a certain presence.
Yeah, it's a fairly hefty old girl.